Hey everybody, welcome once again to another classic rock countdown. Today we're going to be exploring the Eagles studio albums. I believe there are 7 of them. And for the record, before we get going, I'm not including Hell Freezes Over because technically that was not a complete studio album. It had too many live versions of their classic songs. So we will not be including Hell Freezes Over in this countdown. So without further ado, let's kick it off. I've been an Eagles fan for less than 20 years, believe it or not. Before that, I really only knew of them and their hit songs because I was in radio and we used to play the crap out of them on the air, of course. But I never explored their albums or their album tracks that generally did not get played on the radio until recently. For quite a while, I had a rough sketch of how I wanted to rank their 7 studio albums, and this album at number 7, for a long time, I actually had listed at number 6, but I finally realized here recently that this album is just not a good conglomeration of what the Eagles stood for all of those years. And that album is their last album, Long Road Out of Eden, that came out in 2007. At the time when this album came out, it was exciting because I was looking forward to hearing some new music from the Eagles after exploring their catalog. And when it came out, there certainly were several songs on it that I liked. But like I said, I continued to go through it and realize, first of all, the double album, I just don't think it was necessary. And I really think that if you were to take the best songs out of this double album and create one album, you would have a pretty darn good album that could compete with the albums they put out in the 70s. As it stands, the main single that came out even before the album did was a song that had been around the block for a while. The Eagles had played with it back in the 70s, a J.D. Souther song called How Long. It's a great song. It sounds like the Eagles. Very representative of the Eagles sound. I'll name a few other songs that I like from the album. Busy Being Fabulous is a fun song in my opinion. Guilty of the Crime is another one. But when you take a deeper look, 20 songs, you're going to listen to this album and you're going to fall asleep. Not because the songs stink, it's just that, as you know, the Eagles have this sound that sometimes the songs are here, sometimes the songs are down here, and then other times, occasionally they'll have one right in the middle, and it's hard to follow along, in my opinion, with 20 Eagles songs that were created for one album. Now, a greatest hits album is a whole different ball of wax, right? But anyway, I have Long Road Out of Eden at number 7 on my list of Eagles albums ranked. Moving along to the number 6 album by the Eagles. Of course, according to my opinion and my opinion only, obviously you're welcome to have your opinion. I have an album at number 6 that most people would have, I'm guessing anyway from what I've seen, would have higher on their list, and I can't buy it. In 1975, the Eagles added a second guitarist to the band to tag along with Bernie Leadon, and that was, of course, Don Felder. And a lot of people said that his first album with the band had them slanting more towards a rock-oriented sound. And On the Border, the album On the Border, I just don't feel it. I mean, Already Gone is one of my favorite songs by the Eagles of all time. But other than that, I just don't feel the rock essence that people describe on this album. For me, this album is actually kind of boring. After Already Gone, I would say my next favorite song is Old 55, which, I mean, not to say bad things about it, but the Eagles didn't even write that song. That's a Tom Waits song. It's probably my second favorite song on the album. James Dean, I like it okay, but again, nothing for me says rock the same way Already Gone does. And I just don't understand this whole rock essence of the On the Border album. I find it to be a little bit draggy and boring. Best of My Love, I know it was a #1 song, but I just don't like the song at all. And again, these are my personal opinions, and you're obviously welcome to yours. So at number 6, I have the album On the Border. At number 5, another album that I think is probably going to be controversial to have it at number 5 because it's such a talked about album, especially because of the title track. I've got Desperado at number 5 of Eagles albums ranked all time. There are just some things about this record that don't click with me. First of all, 3 different versions of Doolin Dalton. I like the song as a leadoff for a concept album of the Old West, but to have an instrumental of it as well and then reprise it at the end, I don't think that was necessary. I think coming up with maybe an additional track would have been great. My favorite song actually on this album is Certain Kind of Fool, which was never even a single to begin with. I love Randy Meisner's performance of this song that was written by Henley and Fry as well as him. But overall, for me, the album is just not that great. Tequila Sunrise, of course, and Desperado are great songs, but everything other than those 3 songs that I've just mentioned they're average at best as far as I'm concerned. I do enjoy listening to the album, but I've got to be in the right mood. I think it was cool for them to do it back in 1973, but for my money, it's at number 5 on the list of Eagles albums all time. Moving right along, we are in the thick of things, counting down the Eagles discography. We are at where are we at now? Number 4. We're about halfway through. This is when you start getting into albums that you kind of like. And for me, the number 4 Eagles album of all time is from 1975. It's One of These Nights. So for starters, you have to admit that there are some great singles and songs on this album. Of course, the title track, One of These Nights, as well as Lying Eyes and Take It to the Limit, 3 of their best songs of all time, in my opinion. So that right there gives a nice push for the One of These Nights album. Now, at the same time, this was where Bernie Leadon was basically running himself out of the band. He was not happy with the direction the music was going, which I think is kind of funny because, and maybe it's because rock music was different in the 70s than it is today, but I still don't feel like the Eagles were getting that heavy in the mid 70s. And I think that there was probably still room for Bernie Leadon in the band at the time, but it just didn't work out. And you can tell that by the songs that he has on this album. The instrumental, of course, Journey of the Sorcerer, that ends side 1. And then, of course, he ends side 2 as well with the ridiculously pretty damn bad I Wish You Peace song that probably never should have been on the album, according to Don Henley. Despite Bernie Leadon and his banjo being kind of out of place on this album, I still don't mind the song Journey of the Sorcerer. It probably didn't fit the album, but maybe it did a little bit. I don't know. Maybe it also could have been a little bit shorter because at 6 minutes and 40 seconds, it's probably too long. There are other decent songs on this album, but nothing that I get really overly excited about. After the Thrill Is Gone, every time I listen to it, I like it just a little bit more. In general, those Henley slow songs for me, like Best of My Love that I mentioned earlier, just aren't my favorite Eagles songs. Visions is an okay song. Too Many Hands is an okay song. So for the most part, this is a solid album, and that's why I've got One of These Nights at number 4 on the list of Eagles all-time albums. Getting down to the nitty gritty, we are looking at number 3 right now of all-time Eagles albums. And this particular one I had at number 2 on my personal list for a long time. I've actually bumped it backwards, but not because I like it any less, but because what I used to have at number 3, I've decided needs to be number 2, which you'll find out here shortly. At number 3, this is the album that Ultimate Classic Rock, the website, actually listed as the number 7 Eagles album of all time. They think this album is their worst. I could not disagree more. It's their 1972 debut self-titled Eagles album. I have it at number 3. One of the things that comes to mind when I think about the Eagles' career, and especially their first album, is how many unsung songs are on that album that you don't really hear about all the time when people talk about the Eagles. Of course, when you talk about the Eagles, you talk about Hotel California, Take It to the Limit, Tequila Sunrise, and songs like that. But Witchy Woman is one of those songs that I just think that the first 3 songs on this album, Take It Easy, a classic, Witchy Woman, and Chug All Night, which is a solid song, not a great song, but a solid song. I just love that 1, 2, 3 punch of the first three tracks on this self-titled album. In addition, we get Randy Meisner doing Take the Devil. I actually kind of like that song that he wrote by himself. Peaceful, Easy Feeling, another classic Eagles song, is also on this album. And it just, honestly, it's a good listen from top to bottom, especially when I sit back and think about how this was the world's introduction to the Eagles. Eagles, the album The Eagles, number 3 for me all time. At number 2, this is an album that, again, I don't see ranked very high on all-time Eagles albums lists, but I really think this album is solid. As I mentioned before, I had it at number 3 for a long time and then realized, gosh, I really, really like this album. At number 2, it's The Long Run. As I sit here and look through the track listing of the Long Run album, I'm telling you, there's only a couple songs that I'm not very big on. Let me tell you, I love The Long Run. I can't tell you why brings Timothy B. Schmidt to the forefront for the very first time as he joins the Eagles. In the City is another great song, another great 1, 2, 3 punch here on the Long Run album. The Disco Strangler, not my favorite song, but King of Hollywood, I mean, although it doesn't really sound like the Eagles, I really like that song too. In fact, there are 2 songs that really don't sound like the Eagles that I really like. And I think that's why this album usually gets put lower on lists. But I loved it when the Eagles would take a chance every once in a while. They didn't go crazy on taking chances on albums, like as a whole, but they would throw a song in here and a song there. And they really did it here on the Long Run with songs like King of Hollywood and Teenage Jail. I love the song Teenage Jail. I know that it's probably not everybody's favorite, but something about that song that I always want to hear it for sure when it comes on my stereo. Of course, we've also got another great, in my opinion, 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 punch on side 2, Heartache Tonight, a classic. Those Shoes, the aforementioned Teenage Jail. The Greeks Don't Want No Freaks is another good song. Not great, but a good song that kind of comes out pretty neat, I think, after Teenage Jail. It sounds right for me. It's a great 1-2 punch there between those 2 songs. And the Sad Cafe at the end, which, again, not my favorite song, but it's not unusual to end an Eagles album with a slow, dare I use the word draggy song. But I just can't help but love this album from top to bottom as a whole. The Long Run, number 2 of Eagles albums all time. Before I give you my number 1 Eagles album of all time, you probably figured out what it is by now, I wanted to mention to you, and I'm going to put a link above here, I did a video a few years ago on this channel where I discussed the songwriting prowess of both Glenn Frey and Don Henley. It was a bit of a deep dive into whether either one of them are capable of writing a really, really good song by themselves. So I'm going to put the link above here right now. You should be seeing it about now. Please check that out as well if you're so inclined. And maybe someday I'll do another one a little bit fresher. So at number 1, if you're following along at home, you know my number 1 album of all time from the Eagles is the classic Hotel California. For what it's worth, with all the differences in Ultimate Classic Rock's countdown versus mine, we did both have Hotel California at number 1. And believe me, I took a hard look at my list before I shot this video. I wanted to make sure that I gave you my real opinion today on these Eagles albums, and not based on what everybody else thinks, or not based on what I maybe thought a few years ago when I first ranked them. Hotel California is one of those albums that when you listen to it for the first time, you probably get it right away. There is a fantastic mix of music, and if you want to talk about another great 1, 2, 3 punch in an album by the Eagles, let's look at Hotel California, of course, 6.5 minutes of guitar gold. From there it moves on to New Kid in Town, which is a song that I never was a big fan of. I played the living tar out of it on the radio, but it's really started to grow on me over the years, and it's a perfect number 2 song on the track listing. And number 3, of course, Life in the Fast Lane, written by Don Henley, Joe Walsh, and Glenn Frey. It was originally supposedly a finger exercise for Joe Walsh to warm up with on the guitar, and it became Life in the Fast Lane, a very popular song. Again, played it a lot on the radio, but it's one that you cannot deny. Number 4, the final track on side 1 is Wasted Time. One of the slower songs that Don Henley sings that I actually kind of like. Again, not my favorite, but it's a solid song that fits well in the track listing of this classic album, Hotel California. Weirdly enough, the second side has a reprise instrumental of Wasted Time. So if you can think about it, back in the day, you had the album, and on the front side, Wasted Time, 4 minutes and 55 seconds. You flip it over, and then you get another almost minute and a half of instrumental of Wasted Time, leading into the song Victim of Love. And one of those things, again, that I don't know that it was necessary. I'm not sure why they did it, why they thought they had to do it. It's okay. For the most part, it works really well nowadays when you listen to it on CD or on streaming. They just kind of fade right into each other, and you don't even realize that there's a track called Wasted Time Reprise. After that, you get the song Victim of Love, Pretty Maids All in a Row with Joe Walsh's vocal. Try and Love Again was Randy Meisner's final song with the Eagles, and The Last Resort at the end, again, 7 minutes and 25 seconds. I don't know about these long songs. Hotel California being that long, that's one thing. I'm not sure if The Last Resort needed to be that long, but it's okay. It still works because this is a good album. Overall, it's number 1 for me because I love Hotel California, Life in the Fast Lane, New Kid in Town. I really like Victim of Love, Wasted Time. Pretty Maids All in a Row is a beautiful song. You just cannot beat this album, Hotel California at number 1. But to be honest with you, I could mix and mingle my top 4 Eagles albums any day of the week. I just love listening to all 4 of those albums. So there you have it. The number 1 Eagles album of all time, according to me, is Hotel California. But I want to hear what you think. Where did I go wrong? Where did I go right? Comment below. Also, don't forget to like and please subscribe to my channel. I will have more goodness from classic rock music in the near future. And I've already got some of it uploaded right now. So go ahead and take a look at the channel if you are so inclined. Thanks for joining me. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next time.